This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. Coming up on this week's show, a review of Resilient Lady, one of Virgin Voyages ships. And as always, staff writer Richard Sims on deck with cruise news. Jumping to him now. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
So we start with a story of one ship's run-in with some rough weather.
To say the least, this was Carnival Panorama, and it was sailing in the Gulf of California. And which, can I just tell you that until this story, I didn't even know where that was. I had to look it up. The incident occurred around 8:15 on August 20th. And passengers were having dinner and seeing shows. And then they hit this weather, and the ship actually listed. I'm not sure if there's a certain number that you have to hit in order to be counting as listed, as opposed to, just sort of your normal rocky weather. But it did, in fact, list. In a statement to Cruise Radio, a Carnival spokesperson said the ship was hit by, quote, heavy wind and rain. There was minor damage. A show was halted midway through for the safety of the performers, which, is always a big question. And the cruise line reported that 9 guests were treated at their medical center. No serious injuries. All are stable, but 2 guests were going to later be referred to a hospital for additional evaluation when the ship arrived in La Paz. But, scary moment or two there. I'm sure, people had visions of the Poseidon Adventure in their head for a few seconds there.
Yeah, and you left out the major part there in that quote you read, man. It's a heavy wind and rain leading to the ship listing. You didn't say that, and that was the big thing there.
I did not, but I had already said that it was listing, so I guess I just sort of assumed that was a given. But you're right. That was the important detail in that quote.
I'm just glad a cruise line is saying the ship did list, is all I'm trying to say, because you don't really hear that a lot. It's always, we just kind of rocked and rolled a little bit. All right, next.
No, everything is fine. Nothing to see here.
And 3 Miami residents wound up in handcuffs following the cruise. Well, 2 wound up in handcuffs, and 1 was arrested later on that day.
Yeah, I hope they had a really nice, relaxing time on their cruise, because the second the ship returned to Miami, they were greeted by police who took them in and then got the third party, and they all were taken into jail. It seems they used a fraudulent credit card to buy gift cards. My favorite part of this whole story is where they did this. They did it at Winn-Dixie. If you're not from the South, you probably don't know Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie is a grocery chain, and it's second only in name to Piggly Wiggly. I used to love saying I was going to the Piggly Wiggly. Anyway, they used these gift cards to book themselves a cruise. Between the 3 of them, their scheme netted around $30,000. So they not only booked that cruise, but also went on a shopping spree at places like Apple and TJ Maxx. Maybe they were buying things to wear on their cruise. I never actually saw what cruise line they were on. Do you have any idea?
They were on Carnival Cruise Line. I believe it was Carnival Sunrise.
Okay. You can see their mugshots on the website, and they will. There's a very good chance that they are going to end up on that infamous Carnival Banned for Life list.
And there's been a big change over at Norwegian Cruise Line.
Yeah, after only 2 years in the top spot, David Herrera is stepping down as president of Norwegian Cruise Line. For the moment, Harry Sommer, who is the president and CEO of the parent company, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, he is stepping into the vacated role while they look for someone to fill Herrera's shoes. It's very interesting time for this to be happening, given that, so under Herrera, he introduced Viva and Aqua. He was working on Luna. He was working on the new plans for the private island. So there's a lot going on at Norwegian, and this is a very interesting time for there to be a change like this. I'll be interested to see if when they find his replacement, do they borrow someone from another line? Do they hire someone from within? Does Harry eventually assume the role permanently? No word, and no word really on what was behind this change. It's kind of interesting in that Frank Del Rio was in charge for quite a long time. And Herrera only lasted 2 years. They are using the term stepping down where his tenure is concerned. So we don't really know too much yet about the circumstances.
And we have yet another report of a fight breaking out on a cruise line. And man, you won't believe what this one was over.
Oh, yes, I will. This was on the Carnival Sunrise. And on the last night of the cruise, as it was heading back to Miami, a fight broke out. It's on video. It apparently was over chicken tenders. Now, that may not be true. It may just be they were fighting over whatever the food was on the buffet. But the person who posted the video said that it was over chicken tenders. There were about 20 people involved. You could at one point see one of the security guards kind of going forward, and it's a pretty violent fight. And as the fists are flying, you see him look at it and kind of back away like, no, I don't think so. I'm assuming he was going to get back up. But this is the second time this month that there's been a Carnival-related fight. The first one was earlier this month outside the Long Beach, California terminal where the Carnival Firenze was docked. And again, I really, 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 really want to stress that while this was an event that happened on a Carnival ship that was caught on tape, it is not just a Carnival problem. There was a big 30-person brawl on Royal Caribbean's private island, Perfect Day at Coco Cay. There have been fights on other ships. It does seem like we see a disproportionate amount of this on Carnival, and it does seem as if Carnival is doing everything in its power to sort of dial this behavior back. They've put a lot of rules in place. They've, really been driving home their etiquette policies, but 2:00 in the morning, the drinks have been flowing, and you want your chicken tenders. I guess this is what happens.
And an effort to derail Royal Caribbean's latest project in Mexico is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, it sure is, and in a relatively short time. This is about Royal Caribbean's sequel, if you will, to Perfect Day at Coco Cay. This is Perfect Day Mexico, and the petition that's being circulated reads in part, a massive project led by Royal Caribbean threatens the very existence of Mahahal, a coastal town bordering the world's second largest coral reef. This project involves the construction of a 90-hectare water park on a protected mangrove forest, a natural barrier essential to marine life, ecological balance, and our future. This was launched by a dive master named Morgane Vainberg, and please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her name. Between the two of us, we have a really good reputation for doing that. It has over 200,000 signatures already. She says that Perfect Day Mexico has the potential to handle up to 20,000 cruise guests per day, which will generate a quote, and this is again a quote, tons of chemical sunscreen, plastic waste, water polluting mega cruise ships, and absurd freshwater consumption. Right now, the project is expected to launch in 2 years, but we'll have to wait and see if any of this type of protest has an impact on the plans for the destination. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this kind of protest, but it really seems like this one got a lot of support behind it in a really relatively short period of time. I don't know if that'll translate into, any kind of action, but it's something to keep an eye on.
And we're ending on the rare man overboard story that has a very happy ending.
Well, and it makes sense that it has an happy ending because this took place on a Disney ship, and Disney's supposed to be like, the happiest place on earth. So, yay, we get a man overboard story that has a happy ending. And the reason it has a happy ending is that no man or woman or child actually went overboard. This was on the Disney Wish, and they had a man overboard report, and they did all the things that you do under these circumstances. They were throwing, there was a report that they were throwing life rings into the water, which is a little weird to me because, what were they throwing them at, seeing as they couldn't see anything in the water? But eventually it turned out that this was a false alarm. Something went overboard, but it was, they don't know whether it was a towel or a chair or, a piece of garbage for all anybody knows. But at the end of the day, there was no man overboard, and the ship was able to continue on its way to Disney's private destination, and all's well that ends well. I am hoping that no one goes overboard on my upcoming trip, which is going to be on the Brilliant Lady. I am super excited. New ship out of New York. And that's why I'm kind of looking forward to listening to your interview that's coming up because while it's not the Brilliant Lady, it is one of Virgin's ships. Which one is it?
The Resilient Lady.
The Resilient Lady. And since all the lady ships are very similar, I mean, there are some changes on Brilliant Lady, but since they're all similar, I'm kind of interested in this because it's going to be my first time on Virgin. So I want to hear what this person's experience was and see what I can learn from them.
Staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thank you, my friend.
As always, glad to be here.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
All right, Stephen just returned from a 14-night transatlantic cruise that left out of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and went over to Barcelona, Spain on Virgin Voyages. Resilient Lady. He joins us on the line to talk all about this transatlantic. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Thanks, Doug.
Excited to talk to you about Resilient Lady today. I don't think we've done a review of this one on the show yet. So we'll take a step back before we get to the ship itself. You're in the Detroit area. Lots of good music out of there. What made you decide I'm going to fly down to Puerto Rico and take a 14-night transatlantic to Europe?
You know, I've done probably about 40 cruises in my life, and it's always been a dream to do a transatlantic. Once I realized how much I really loved sea days, and it kind of worked out where I had a buddy who wanted to go, and we had some friends that we met on a prior cruise who had already booked this voyage. So we decided to, we both had some flexibility and decided to jump in and do it.
Awesome. Any pre-cruise time in San Juan before leaving?
Yeah, I had 3 nights in San Juan, stayed right in Old San Juan there, and had, a nice amount of time to explore the city. Not being a cruise passenger, because I've been there many times on different itineraries, and it was interesting to see it at night and see it when cruise ships weren't in port as well. I had a great time there.
Now, 40 cruises, that's a lot of sailings. Any one cruise line in particular, or are you scattered?
Most of mine have been within Royal Caribbean and Celebrity, but I've also cruised Carnival and more recently MSC, and this was actually my second on Virgin Voyages.
Okay. And how was the embarkation for Resilient Lady when you're embarking there in San Juan?
So the port is right downtown, right off of Old San Juan, which is super convenient. We literally just walked with our bags from where we stayed right to the port. And once we arrived at the facility, we kind of were put into a little waiting area. And we had about a little bit of a wait before we could board the ship. But I don't know if it was because she was preparing for such a long voyage, it took a little longer to stock up. But we had about an hour and a half wait before actually boarding the vessel.
Now, does the ship actually board right there in Old San Juan, or is it over where Royal Caribbean boards their ships?
It was actually right in Old San Juan, which was just super convenient.
All right, so you make your way on Resilient Lady. I know you've been on one other sailing before. Your first impressions of Resilient Lady?
Very familiar. I had cruised prior on Valiant Lady, and I mean, they are identical ships. There's really nothing different between any of them within the Virgin Voyages fleet. But you board right on, I believe it's deck 7 in what they call the roundabout area, which is the closest thing they have to like a Centrum or Central area on that class of ship. And it's an exciting embarkation or an exciting boarding. They have people clapping and smiling and kind of whooping up the crowd and getting you really excited about what's to come.
Being a frequent Royal Caribbean cruiser, you know how that entrance is very grand on their ships. What is the entrance like on Resilient Lady?
So you walk in onto what would be the sort of the upper level of kind of a 2-level spiral staircase, which is centered in that kind of entertainment area. And it's not really that kind of grand entrance or anything like that. Mm-hmm. However, everything was modern and clean and had a very upscale appearance, but it definitely doesn't have that grand ambiance that you get on a lot of ships when you first step on board.
What kind of stateroom did you book for this 14-night cruise, and how was it throughout your voyage?
We had a sea terrace on deck 14. And it was functional. It was a nice cabin overall. One thing I would recommend for anyone, if they are doing a sea terrace, maybe go a little bit on a lower deck. We were the top deck of sea terraces, and the way that ship is designed, it's kind of skinny on the hotel decks in the middle, and then it flares back up for like the pool deck and so forth. So we had a big sort of adjustment above our sea terrace, so we could see the ocean, we could see the horizon, but we couldn't see a whole lot above that. Mm-hmm. So I definitely would recommend maybe being on a more central deck, up and down versus that high up.
Now, does Virgin call their balconies sea terraces? Or is there a difference between a balcony and a sea terrace?
They call them all sea terraces and until they get to suite levels, and then they have other names for those.
Okay.
So this was a standard non-suite regular sea terrace.
Gotcha. And as far as space, upgraded amenities, I remember briefly when I was in the stateroom, was it controlled by an iPad or something?
Yeah, there is an iPad type device that controls the lighting, the curtains, and the television as well. And it has a lot of kind of fun features where you can set moods. There's like going out, hangover mood. There's get pumped up. There's get it on, where it dims everything down to like blue lights, and the curtains and everything sort of adjust accordingly. It's fun to play around with. One thing that was, I think, most interesting about the tech in the room was, even if you didn't really use the iPad a lot, it would recognize when you came in the room, and the lights would come on and the curtains to the balcony would open up automatically, which was a nice welcoming kind of feel.
Do you remember when this brand first launched, there was pushback with the staterooms on board? Do you remember what that was about? Was it the configuration?
Yeah, a lot of it was the lack of storage. You know, having done a lot of cruises, I'm used to, particularly Royal Caribbean and Celebrity. I mean, they're great at using every inch of space to your storage ability. Where, when Virgin Voyages first launched, they had instead of a nightstand with like drawers, for example, where you could actually store things in, it would just be like a table with nothing underneath it. And they had a lot of pushback from kind of the sparse nature of the furnishings and the resultant lack of storage space.
Gotcha. So it's very minimalistic look.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even today, I think they have corrected some of that. I think the main issue where they're still really lacking storage is in the bathroom. The bathroom it's very nicely designed in terms of materials and appearance, but it's not so functional, even for storing things on like a vanity, for example. It's got a giant sink that's very pretty and takes up a lot of the space where you would normally store things. There's no storage behind the mirrors and things like that. So I think they have a way to go on that. It's the type of space that looks really nice in photographs, but when you actually settle in, there are some opportunities for sure still.
Let's talk about the dining on board Resilient Lady, and we'll start at, they don't call it a buffet, but is it called the galley on here?
Yeah, enjoyed the galley, and the main difference between it and a typical buffet is there are more, I guess, individual stations with very different food that from each other, but they always have like the same section. So there's like a noodle bar, and then there's like a diner section that's got like breakfast 24 hours a day. And there's a bento box section that has grab and go sushi and a variety of other things, hot press sandwiches, paninis, these types of things. And I think they've made some changes from when I first cruised on Valiant Lady. Originally, they were very particular about, okay, you sit down and then we come to you and you order these things from these different stations from us. And then we bring the food back to you. So I was kind of prepared for that type of experience. And I don't know if it's because the ship wasn't full or what, but you could certainly still do that and place your order with a crew member, but they were also open to you ordering right up at the stations as well, which I actually found a little bit more convenient.
So not a buffet, more maybe like a Panera with a counter?
Yeah, and you might just go to like, 2 or 3 different counters to get your things, but they're branded very permanently, compared to when you think about maybe a typical buffet. They have those like magnetic signs, and they kind of change what's at that station here and there. These feel more like, I'd say it feels a lot more like a food court, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, on this 14-night sailing, you had a lot of nights to eat a lot of food. So what we'll do here is give us the first restaurant you went to and give us the highlight there for you. Then we can move to the next one. But also I want to ask, because this was a 14-night cruise, were you able to repeat restaurants without any problem?
Okay, yes. So given the length of the cruise, yes, we were able to dine in restaurants multiple times, particularly the ones that were open for multiple meals. But I'll start with Razzle Dazzle. That's kind of the more casual of the restaurants, and it's open for brunch as well as dinner. And that is just a really great kind of, I wouldn't say super quick like the galley, but less formal, more kind of approachable types of foods. They have this kind of vegan lean to it, but they also have meat options as well. So they kind of divide the menu into what they call nice, which is the vegan, and naughty, which would be non-vegan items. So that was one that we enjoyed for dinner as well as brunch. One of the nice things about brunch there, as well as the wake, is they do have an option for a bottomless mimosa and other brunch beverages for an additional $35. So we found that to be a nice value, given that there are no drink packages on Virgin Voyages. So we took advantage of those brunches a couple of times since we had so many sea days.
And speaking of the drinks, I noticed that people walk around with a band on their arm, kind of like Royal Caribbean's WOW band, I guess. What is that about?
You have a band that everybody wears. So if you're ordering a drink that is not included, which would be like any alcoholic beverage, upon ordering it, they will scan your band and then it's taken care of. And there's no settling up. There's no like the slip with the tip or paper or anything like that. It's just an automatic room charge and it's done.
And how about Pink Agave?
Oh, Pink Agave was great. That is their elevated sort of Latin style restaurant. Fantastic ambiance, really fantastic food. The guacamole was out of this world. And what's nice about it is they just have very interesting kind of unique twists on a lot of familiar like Mexican and Latin favorites. So one of the favorite places for us on board, we actually dined there I think 2 or 3 times during the sailing.
Did you do Test Kitchen?
Yeah, we did Test Kitchen actually 3 times.
Nice.
So Test Kitchen actually has 3 different menus. They call them an A, B, and a C. So we timed our dinners in a way that we were actually able to get each of them. And I think they were doing about 4 days a piece, something like that. One thing that I did notice about Test Kitchen in comparison to from when I sailed on Virgin probably 4 years prior is the joke used to always be you go to Test Kitchen and then you have to go to the galley because the portions were just so small. They were, beautifully prepared and stunning and creative for sure, but the joke was everybody always left hungry. I think that they have maybe gotten the message, because I definitely found the portions to be a lot more substantial on this sailing than I had previously when I sailed a few years ago on Virgin Voyages.
With it being a set menu there, is it approachable where you'll find something you'll like?
Yes, you could see the menu before. Approachable is not the word I would use with Test Kitchen, because the menu descriptions are not very usable. For example, one of the dishes they're known for, it just says mushroom, and it's one of like the earlier courses, because Test Kitchen is like a 4 or 5 course experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know that it contains mushroom, but it's actually like a puree of a bunch of mushrooms and other seasonings, and it comes out shaped like one whole mushroom. It actually looks and kind of feels like it's one, and then you sort of cut into it, and you find out it's a paste. It's like a puree. So the descriptions that they give are kind of fun, but they're not very descriptive. So I recommend Test Kitchen for people who like to experiment, who like to try new things, new tastes, new textures. If you're not into that, if you're a very traditional eater, it might not be for you. The nice thing is, on any cruise, you're never underfed. So if you don't like it, you can always move on to something else.
The Korean restaurant Gunbae, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Gunbae.
I want to ask because my very first time ever going to a Korean restaurant was in July, so like a month ago. And I've been back twice since then because I had no clue these even existed, like where you cook your own food and it's not like teppanyaki style, which is what I always thought it was for some reason. And it's amazing. So what is it like on the ship?
Oh, it's a wonderful experience. They actually cook it for you, and they kind of guide you through as well. So they present you with a menu, and they give you the opportunity to order off of that. However, all the times I've been to Gunbae, they also give the option of, look, we know what's great here. There's usually like 6 to 8 people at a table. And they say, if you want, we'll just make a bunch of different things and everybody shares it. And that's the way it's always been when I've dined there. So they'll do a mixture of, all kinds of great little appetizers, and then they'll bring out different meats that they make for you on the central grill, which is in front of, just your table. And one of the more unique things about Gunbae is they actually start off with some games. And the first one is like a drinking game where you have to clap and count to this certain, it's pretty easy to learn, but they kind of teach you the overall rhythm. And then basically if you mess up, you have to do a shot of sake, and it goes around and around and around until the last person. So it kind of livens the mood in the beginning. Unless you're traveling with a big group, if you're at Gunbae, you will be seated with other people that you don't know, more than likely. Mm-hmm. So it kind of helps in that respect as well. It kind of breaks the ice and loosens everybody up and gets everybody, in the mood for a good meal and having a good time.
Would the dock and dock house, is that considered casual, kind of grab and go?
Yeah, I sort of saw that as more of like a snack type of place. Mm-hmm. It's on the stern, kind of lower on the ship. I think it's deck 7 or 8. And they have a lot of Mediterranean inspired foods there. They're very small portions. I'd say they're like appetizer portions. And it's more of a place to kind of hang out, because that is a very beautiful part of the ship, right at the wake there. And they have entertainment. They'll have singers, or more like, I'd say, guitarists and things like that from time to time, but not a place where most people would typically plan a meal, but maybe to grab an afternoon snack.
What were your thoughts of the wake, which is, I guess you would say, the steakhouse?
The wake is an absolutely beautiful space. It's probably the most stunning interior space on the ship, at least for dining. You enter in down this sort of spiral staircase, and there's this gorgeous gold chandelier, and you kind of descend in. And as you enter, there are giant windows overlooking the rear of the ship. And just the finishes and the materials in there are just top notch. It has for dinner. It has kind of an intimate type of feel with lower lighting and just a nice sort of glow to it. And the food certainly meets the criteria of what you'd expect of, I'd say, a premium steakhouse experience on one of the mainstream cruise brands.
I feel like I'm missing one or two.
There's Extra Virgin, which is their elevated Italian eatery. And just sort of like Pink Agave is the elevated Latin, this would be the equivalent for Italian. Beautiful space, fantastic food. Again, if you like Italian food, they're going to have a lot of creative mixes on some things that you've had before. And they really deliver on a really good quality experience. And I'd say that one is, if you think of the Wake as the most fine dining, Extra Virgin is sort of right there with it, or maybe just below it in terms of that upscale feel.
Did we miss any dining venues?
They have a couple of other things scattered about the ship. They have the pizza place, they call it, which is basically kind of grab and go pizza. They do it by the box instead of by the slice, which is kind of interesting. So you actually go in there, you order the pizza that you want. They'll have a few different options. You can even customize a little bit based on what ingredients they have right there in front of you. And they cook it, and you can either eat it there or take it away. There is a little bit of a delay because they are cooking everyone individually, but they were out within, I'd say, about 10 minutes or so. They have an ice cream shop. They call it Lick Me Till I Scream. And that's included in the voyage as well, with a nice variety of ice creams and gelatos. They had a really great place. I forget the name of it, but it's kind of hidden up on, I think it was deck 15 or 16 above the pool area, sort of near the funnel. And they have poke bowls there that are out of this world. That was one of my favorite things to do for lunch, was to run up there and grab one of the poke bowls. And it just felt like a nice, healthy option. It was pretty quick. And then they had they had a coffee shop, a couple coffee shops throughout. Some of the smaller things that you would expect. But in terms of the major dining venues, yeah, I think we've hit them all.
Okay. All right, well, let's talk about the entertainment on board. And because it was a 14-night cruise, did any of the entertainment... Well, first off, what did you think of the entertainment, and did any of it ever repeat itself?
Doug, the entertainment was fantastic. Virgin Voyages has a little bit different entertainment program than what I've experienced on mainstream cruise lines, for sure. And it's probably not for everybody. The shows are more avant-garde. They're definitely more sexualized. They're a little more out there, I would say. They're not, we're dealing with also a clientele that's all 18 and above. So there are literally no children or anyone on the boat. So they can take a few more risks. They can do things that you wouldn't be able to get away with in other environments. I'm not saying there's like nudity or anything like that, but just the themes of things just tend to be a little more adult, a little more edgy, a little more avant-garde. What the performers wear, mimics that as well, or lack of sometimes what they wear. But it definitely is a little more adult experience. But I wouldn't want anyone to maybe get lost in that, because the talent was absolutely there. And the theming of the different shows was fantastic as well. A couple that stood out to me were Lola's Library was a fantastic show that they host in the Red Room. Actually, I think that one was in the Manor. Just a really wonderful show with a lot of fantastic visuals and great singing and dancing, not just on the stage, but up in the rafters, acrobatics and that type of thing. There was one called Parsiphony that was equally fantastic as well. I will say, as a note, for because a couple of those shows were they were not located in the Red Room, which is like the bigger venue, but the venue that they were in was a smaller venue. So it was a little bit difficult sometimes to get a good seat or a good even place to stand in there to see what was going on. So I would say for anyone going on a Virgin cruise and take a look and see where the show is. And if it's in the Manor, try to get there early if you really want to experience the show. Otherwise, it can be a little bit tricky. Another great show was one that I saw on my previous Virgin sailing. It was called the Misbehave Show. That one is in the Red Room, so it's in the slightly larger theater, and it has a lot of audience interaction. And the show has a lot of random things going on. It's meant to, they sort of split the audience side by side and have people yell out random things to get points that mean nothing. So it has a very random, funny nature to it. And I will note, it was very different on this sailing than on the last sailing I went on. When I was on Valiant Lady, I actually walked away with that being my favorite show I've probably ever seen on a ship. For whatever reason on Resilient Lady, the audience on this sailing took the audience interaction maybe a little bit too far. I don't know if people were just drinking really hard that day, but the performers still have a script, and they want the audience to yell and say a couple of things, but people were maybe a little too rambunctious. A couple of times I felt bad for the cast members because the audience got a little bit out of control, but at the same time, I mean, everybody at the end was having a great time, and it wound up being a really funny show. But I would say if you like just out there kind of wild stuff, the Misbehave Show is one definitely not to miss.
So a couple of things there. With the entertainment, is that something you pre-book before the cruise, or you book on board?
So on our sailing, we did not need to pre-book. Mm-hmm. I think it may have been because the ship was the sailing was so long, and they did repeat the shows.
Yeah,
most of the shows I think repeated at least twice. So there was certainly a chance for everybody to see every show. However, when I sailed on Valiant Lady a few years ago, booking the shows was something that was sort of required. And then it was one of those things where if you didn't book it, you could come in, 5 minutes before, and if they had extra seats, they would see you.
Okay, gotcha. Now, as far as the sea days with crowds and congestion, how was that?
Well, it actually was pretty good, Doug. This sailing was, depending on who I asked, I think we were between a half and 2/3 capacity. So the sea days, crowds and congestion on the outside decks was actually pretty manageable, to the point where you didn't really have to go out crazy early to get a chair if you wanted to hang out by the pool. So that actually wasn't too bad. And in terms of inside the ship on sea days, plenty of space, plenty of ability to get into venues and get things easily. One of the things I found, this being my first transatlantic, the pace on this sailing is just very different than what I'm used to on my typical, maybe 5 to 7 night sailings. Everybody was just a lot more relaxed and laid back in terms of, especially when you do these real short cruises, like a 4-night, I feel like everyone's, a little on edge in the beginning, trying to get their hours in the sun in. And because we left San Juan and we didn't even go to anywhere else in the Caribbean first, we were 8 nights at sea right out of San Juan, just booking it across the Atlantic. It just had a relaxed vibe to it, and it was very pleasant during those sea days.
What would you say the demographic was on board?
It was pretty similar, actually, to what I experienced on the last Virgin Voyages trip that I did, which was a 5-nighter, surprisingly. It was a lot younger than I expected it to be. My buddy and I we're in our 30s, 40s, and I'd say we were probably in the mix. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say we were, the youngest people, but, we were probably in the mix. I'd say most people sort of ranged probably from about where we were, 30s, 40s, up to 70s. But I'd say the largest band of folks were probably like 40 to 55, somewhere in there.
That's good to hear. It's always good when you're not the oldest person in the room, right?
Exactly. And one of the things I found interesting about the clientele on board that was just different from any other sailing I've done is a transatlantic voyage is a very particular sailing. I mean, you choose that with intent.
Sure.
Versus most sailings, you could just sort of wind up on board, a 4-night or a 5-night or whatever. Everybody had a story about why they were on that voyage. It's also more work to do something like that because you're going out of one city, you're returning on another continent, doing one-way flights. It takes a lot of time, obviously, to do these sailings. So it was very interesting speaking to people about why they chose that voyage. And I'm a big ship nerd. So for me, I was right at home. I felt like I was with my people. A lot of ship nerds on board, a lot of people who just had things to talk about. And I felt like I could just talk with anyone because you could ask them, is this your first transatlantic? And if it was, they had a story behind it. If it was their 30th, they had a story behind that too. So that was a nice thing that I had not expected going into it.
And at half capacity sounds like an absolute dream.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow, that's
It
awesome.
was just wonderful.
How about parties by the pool, like theme nights or what have you?
Yeah, so they have their red night, rouge night, I think they call it. And that is usually on a typical sailing on Virgin, it's going to be like your first sea day. But in our situation, we actually had it towards the end of our sailing. And that's an exciting night. They transform the entire ship. Everything turns red. And they have pop-up performances throughout the ship. They sort of, like Scarlet Night, that's what they call it. They have the shows are all themed to it. They tell the story, the mystique of Scarlet Night, and then it just sort of develops throughout the evening into kind of a crescendo out at the pool with the Happenings cast performs out there. They have the big octopus that's inflated out there, and then at the end they encourage everyone to jump in the pool and dance and have a good time. So that was sort of the crescendo of the nightlife activity, Doug, and Scarlet Night is one not to be missed. And for anyone who is thinking about sailing them, just make sure you bring something red to wear for that evening because that's what everybody does. A little bit similar in a way to on MSC cruises, they have their white party night. This would be their sort of equivalent party to that. And it's one of those just not miss events. In terms of the other evenings on board, I was actually a little bit surprised that there was definitely nightlife going on, but the ship was not one of those go until like 2, 3 in the morning. Most things actually were shutting down between maybe midnight and like 1 or 2. And then the bar that's in the roundabout, which is kind of that central staircase, that would be like the last one to stay open. That might stay open till like 3, depending on the crowd. I think because of the length of this sailing, the pace was just a little bit different. So it wasn't as late night of a ship as what I have experienced on a lot of other cruises. Again, 14 nights, you can only stay late that long. Another thing is going transatlantic, going the direction that we went, we started to lose hours. We have time changes back to back to back where you lose an hour each morning. So that may have had something to do with it too. And Doug, it was very interesting because you don't think too much about time changes. When you cruise a lot, you experience those. But this was the first time I've lost them back to back to back, where you wake up 3 days later and you've lost like 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
So I actually talked to some people on board who've done a lot of transatlantics, and they say, any transatlantic's great, but if you have your choice, go the other direction, start in Europe and head towards the US. They say the crew is happier, they're more rested, because remember, they're losing an hour of sleep too. And you're actually gaining 6 hours on your journey versus losing 6 hours. So I wouldn't say not to do one, not to go to Europe if you have the chance, but if it's equal roll of the dice, I know my next one, I'm going to go from Europe to the US and get my 6 hours back.
Fair enough. So back to what you were talking about, like the night party and having a couple of cocktails. There's no drink package, and I realize a lot of people do like to get the drink package. So if you pre-purchase drink credits in advance, is there any incentive to that?
Yeah, so they have 2 things that you can pre-purchase, Sailor Loot and then one that they call just Bar Tab.
Mm-hmm.
And they will have different deals. Oftentimes it will be like if you spend $300 on a bar tab, we'll kick in 100 and then you'll have a $400 bar tab. Sailor Loot, they have some similar things too. And not even sure why they have both, because you can use Sailor Loot on bar tab, on bar purchases, but a bar tab you can only use on bar purchases. Now, in our situation, and one of the reasons I did this cruise is I had $1,200 of bar tab and Sailor Loot from a prior cruise incentive offer that I took advantage of from booking on board to sail on this cruise. So we didn't purchase either of those because we had the $1,200 to spend aboard. But if you didn't have a credit going in and you thought you were going to spend, $400 in alcohol, it would make sense to save the $100 and get that bar tab in advance.
And then
just know that if you don't use it all, you lose it.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. Like if you and your buddy there, could you both like share that $1,200, or was it strictly for you?
Yes, we could both share it. And I'll tell you what, Doug, I was so excited. I'm like, we don't need to buy this. Is almost like having a drink package. And then I did the math on 14 nights and 2 people. It wound up being like $40 a day in drinks, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, it was like it was like 4 drinks a day or something like that. So keep in mind when you're sailing a long period of time that those bar tabs can add up pretty quick, even if you're drinking pretty moderately.
How was the casino with this smoke situation, if they even allow smoking in there?
I don't remember smoking in the casino. I didn't really spend any time in it. I walked through it a couple of times. It is on the smaller side, but I don't remember smoke. In fact, now that I think about it, I don't think smoking was allowed there.
Okay. All right, so the ship leaves San Juan, Puerto Rico. You're at sea for a few days. What was your first port? And give us the highlight.
The first port was Tenerife, and that's in the Canary Islands. That was a really cool spot to go. We took it as a city day and walked around. We hadn't seen land in 8 days. So it was nice to just kind of be on land and walk around. They have a very cool auditorium that actually reminded me a lot of the Sydney Opera House that's right on the water. And we walked to that, took some wonderful pictures, and just enjoyed walking around the town and the parks. And then came back and enjoyed another night on board.
All right. And then after Tenerife?
After Tenerife, we went to Morocco. And that was one of the ones I was most excited to go to just because I'd never been to the continent of Africa before. We actually hired an independent driver that one of the people that we were cruising with prearranged. And we spent a day driving around seeing. One of the big things to see there is the mosque. There's a very significant mosque there in terms of like size and grandeur. And it's just one of those things everybody sees and takes photos of. So we went to that. And then we went to the markets, which were just absolutely like nothing I've ever seen. If you picture like the Indiana Jones style markets with everything from clothing to spices to whatever, that was what we got a chance to walk around in and check out. And then we went to a traditional Moroccan restaurant before coming back to the ship. So that was just a fantastic experience. And then we also spent some time cruising the coast and seeing some of the houses and the coastline. And it was just gorgeous.
A note about Morocco. I was on a hike last November in Hanoi in Vietnam, and two of the girls in our hiking group were from Morocco, and they spoke fluent French. And I didn't realize there was such a large or a big French influence there. I mean, that's not saying much because I don't know much about Morocco, but I found it interesting.
Absolutely. Yep. Our driver spoke French, and our friend Nicole, she was kind of the main communicator. He spoke English very well also, but yep, a lot of French speakers for sure.
Yeah, interesting. So after Morocco, where did you go?
We went to Mallorca in Spain, another island there, and we took that as a beach day and just had a wonderful time. We went to a gorgeous beach, just picturesque, very much like what you'd see in the Caribbean in terms of water clarity and water temp and that sort of thing. And just enjoyed a wonderful day at the beach and walking around. And it was great. It had a little different feel to it than a lot of the beaches I've been in the Caribbean in terms of the it had the natural beauty, but it didn't feel touristy in the way that the Caribbean can often get. And it was just a very relaxing, wonderful experience there in Mallorca.
So you're in Mallorca. You're getting pretty close to Barcelona. Any other ports of call?
Yeah, we had one more Spanish port along the way, Valencia, Spain. And we got off the ship there. It was a beautiful town, some gorgeous parks. And we just had kind of another city day there. Enjoyed the beauty of that, hanging out, having some great food, and just seeing the new sights there in Valencia.
14-night cruise, only 4 port days. Sounds like an absolute dream.
It was wonderful. I can't wait to do another one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so it's time to get off the ship in Barcelona. How was the debark process?
Debark was pretty smooth. Again, with the ship not being near capacity, it was pretty organized. Actually, both of us self-valeted our bags off, so we didn't leave them the night before or anything. So we were able to get up, head to the galley, have kind of a relaxing breakfast, let a lot of the folks sort of get off the ship. And then I think we had to be off by, I think it was maybe like 10 a.m., 9:30, 10 a.m. was a pretty relaxing debark. There was the typical line that you get as you approach the actual exit gangway. But it was probably no more than about, maybe 10 minutes of waiting in line before actually exiting into the port there.
There are 2 different cruise terminals, or cruise ports, I guess, over in Barcelona. There's the World Cruise Center where the smaller ships go, and then there's the big terminal where all the big ships go. Where did Resilient Lady dock?
We were the only ship that I saw there, so I think we may have been in the smaller one. Yeah,
all right.
And it was interesting because I'm used to the facial recognition and everything, and just getting off the ship. And this was the first time in a long time they actually took a look at my passport and actually stamped it. So that was something I didn't expect. But again, they were relatively efficient with that. So that was good.
Plus another stamp on the passport is nice.
Exactly.
That's how I am, at least. So any post-cruise time in Barcelona?
Yeah, I spent 2 nights in Barcelona and then 1 night in Amsterdam, and then wound up flying back from Amsterdam directly to Detroit because we have a direct flight there. And it was wonderful to just have some time in Barcelona to just sort of relax and kind of enjoy it a little bit like a local, actually.
Nice.
And it was great to have a night in Amsterdam as well. And just a wonderful way to kind of cap off a transatlantic vacation.
Any first-time tips to offer someone sailing either Resilient Lady or Virgin Voyages?
I would say the biggest tip I can give is relax and have fun. It is the crew is absolutely fantastic. The ships, the interior spaces of the ships are wonderful as well. I would say, one of the great things from both of my voyages with them is just having an open mind and a great attitude, and you will have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful time.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this transatlantic sailing?
Honestly, I think it was the sea days, Doug.
I know, I hear you.
I mean, it was so wonderful seeing all these new places, and I really got a lot out of them. But being a ship guy and just having those days at sea were fantastic. And one thing I will add is we did go through the that passage there where you come into the bay from the Atlantic Ocean, the Strait of Gibraltar. And I'd say that was a fantastic highlight because we passed that at about 6:30 in the morning. So a lot of people woke up for it, and it was like sunrise, and it was one of the most beautiful sights because as you pass through that strait, you can see Africa on one side of the ship, and then you could see Spain, Europe on the other side of the ship. And it was just a stunning, beautiful morning. Everyone was out like in their robes and hanging out and taking it in, and just experiencing one of those nautical highlights was a wonderful thing I'll never forget.
Where do you think your affinity for cruise ships comes from?
For me, it's the first one I did, I was like a teenager with my parents, and I was just always, and I still am, amazed by the fact that you have this very serious nautical operation with people running it that are like state of the art at what they do, everyone from navigational officers to people in the engine room to people looking at the weather. I mean, it's just such a serious operation from a functional standpoint. Yet it's so, when you're a guest, it's just so pleasant and whimsical and fun and do what you want to do. And there's something about those two combinations of things coming together all in one place that I just find absolutely fascinating, because I appreciate both. I mean, I'm a person that loves to have fun and loves the whimsy and loves to do what I want at any drop of the moment or whatever. But then seeing that we're overseen by this sort of, we're in this bubble where there are all these very serious people keeping us safe and making sure that we can party and have a good time. There's no other place like that in the world that I've ever been. So I've always just had a real affection for that and appreciation for what it makes what it takes to make that happen, to make that experience happen for us.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. So you mentioned you had a lot of loot or onboard credit going in. So that aside, did you find that the value was there for the price of the cruise?
I'd say it was. The thing that really helped with that is that it was a transatlantic. And transatlantic voyages do tend to be a better value on a per day basis than anything else I've ever seen out there. Mainly because as we know, they're repositioning the ship anyway, and they typically don't fill up. So yeah, it was a really good value. I'd say if anyone's looking for a value for cruising and you have some flexibility, I would certainly start with transatlantics, because I think you'll see your best bang for your buck there. And then another thing I just wanted to point out as well, however, on the other side of that, I don't know that I would choose the Virgin Voyages again for a transatlantic. We lucked out weather-wise, Doug. We had really nice weather all the way until we got actually across the Atlantic. And I'm talking like 90s in Puerto Rico down to 80s and 70s for the first like 8 days.
Nice.
But these transatlantics tend to be, they're in April or they're in November, those kind of shoulder seasons where you don't always have predictably good weather. And just the way these ships are designed, they're very warm weather focused. There's no indoor pool. There's no like pool or outside area with a retractable roof where they can, protect for bad weather situations. So, I don't think the ship is ideal for a transatlantic. Again, we lucked out, and I was super happy to do it. That is a consideration I would look at for anyone else looking at transatlantics is, these more all-season ships might give you a more guaranteed good time without having to roll the dice on having the great weather that we had.
Okay, fair enough. Well, in closing here, your final thoughts of Resilient Lady.
Beautiful ship, amazing cast, amazing crew. They really do work hard to create an atmosphere of fun, and they do it in a lot of just kind of exciting ways. The food is probably the best food overall of any ship that I've sailed in terms of the quality. Absolutely fantastic in every way, shape, and form. And those would be my final thoughts. The only kind of downside I see to them is I wish they offered a drink package. I think that would certainly make things a little more easygoing, and you don't have to think about things so much. But besides that, I think they deliver a very distinctive product, and they know their lane, and I think they do a really good job within it.
We've been talking with Stephen about his 14-night sailing from San Juan to Barcelona on Virgin Voyages Resilient Lady. Stephen, great talking to you, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing your vacation with us.
Thank you, Doug. Happy to do it.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,